Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest has written a powerfully insightful and inspirational memoir that exemplifies the American dream. In 1975, after the Viet Cong took over Vietnam and imprisoned her father for working as a doctor for the Americans, she and her family escaped to Saigon to avoid being imprisoned and lived in squalor. At the age of 12, she escaped from Vietnam alone, endured a harrowing trip through the Cambodian jungle, got stranded on a deserted island, and almost starved before being taken to a refugee camp in Thailand, where she lived in an orphanage for 2 years before coming to the United States as a refugee. Her personal journey as a newcomer to America included many challenges, but she overcame every obstacle and got a university education, had several outstanding careers, married the love of her life, converted to Judaism, and raised a family. She's chronicled her story of courage, tenacity, resilience, and survival in her book entitled Souls of a Survivor, a memoir. I was so moved by this woman's indomitable spirit that ultimately led to success and prosperity that I just had to invite her on our show. I'm pleased to welcome Nhi Aronheim. Nhi, thank you so much for joining us.
Harvey, thank you for having me as your guest.
Nhi, I want to start by paying tribute to your mother. Your father was imprisoned in 1975 and your home was destroyed in 1980. Somehow your mother had the good sense to get you and your siblings into Saigon, or Ho Chi Minh City as it was renamed, just on the verge of all of you being imprisoned. She really was a remarkable woman, wasn't she?
Yes, my mother was a remarkable woman. She had a foresight of what was going to happen after the US evacuated from Vietnam in 1975, when my family was left behind.
You lived in Saigon illegally and in terrible squalor, and you survived by making and selling counterfeit cigarettes. You wrote that as a young 11-year-old wheeling and dealing in the streets of Saigon, you were, and I'm quoting you, the opposite of everything that a traditional Asian girl was supposed to be. My free spirit and undisciplined behavior irritated my siblings. Nhi, where do you think your unusual personality came from?
I asked my birth mother about it years later, and she said that she has 5 children of her own. And somehow I was the youngest and I was different than the other 4. But for me personally, after the experience I went through, I think it was both. It's a combo of nature and nurture. Some people are just born to be crazy, like me. Or imagine when you're forced into the situation of survival, you become more creative and learning how to survive and putting food on the table. And that's what I had to do. I had to learn to become creative.
Now, your book takes us through the harrowing trip you took as a 12-year-old to get from Saigon to the refugee camp in Thailand. I'm not going to go into detail about that because people can read that for themselves. But you really did endure some horrific, jaw-dropping obstacles. You said that giving up wasn't an option, and that it's strange what you find you can tolerate when your very existence is on the line. Were there moments, Nhi, when you thought you were not going to survive?
Absolutely. There was a moment when I thought I was going to die. And that's when I was supposed to swim to a boat outside of the Cambodian jungle. And imagine I did not know how to swim. And as I swam or tried my best to get to the boat, I was drowning. And I thought I was dying. And when I got in that moment of dying, I did whatever I could in front of me. I grasped a man's leg who tried to swim to the boat. I almost killed him. And it was not a moment I was proud of. I was hiding that secret for 30 years. Because imagine at 12 years old, I almost kill somebody just for my survival instinct.
And you made it, and he made it.
He made it, and he called me an evil child, which I don't blame him.
Well, you were grasping onto this person like a lifesaver.
Correct.
Now, before you were transferred to an orphanage within the refugee camp in Thailand, you endured sexual and physical assaults from a man who turned out to be your half-brother. You came face to face with him many years later, and you decided to forgive him. That must have been incredibly difficult.
Correct. Forgive somebody who abused you or bully you, abuse you. It's never an easy thing to do. But I know that in order for me to move on with my life, I would have to forgive that person for my own sake.
Even if he wasn't sorry.
Correct. Even if he was not sorry, but for my own sake to live and move on, I had to do that.
To let go.
To let go. Even though at the time when I said, okay, I forgive you, but in my mind and my heart, it was screaming, I hate you. How could you do that to a child? You are an evil person, a sick person. That's what I was screaming in my head. But I knew that there's no way for me to move on with my life if I live with hatred.
Now, when you wrote your book, your children were about the same age as you were in the refugee camp. Your kids have lived a very advantaged life, and you lived with nothing for most of your childhood. Is it important to you, Nhi, that your children appreciate all that they have and not take it for granted?
Absolutely. That is something that I've been drilling on them since they were little. We have this mantra at home, and I usually use Oprah Winfrey's quote: be thankful for what you have, and you are going to end up having more. And if you ask my children, what is their favorite quote at home? That's going to be what they say. But again, they have abundance in this country. They are children who were born in America. And I hate to say this, but they are spoiled, rotten American kids. They told us that they have gratitude. But at the same time, I personally think from my background that they are spoiled, rotten children.
Have they read your book?
Yes, they read my book.
Do they get what you went through?
After they read my book, they said, Mom, we now understand why you have been so tough on us about learning how to have gratitude and the abundance for what we have in this country.
Well, now they really know you.
They really know me. And at the same time, they said, now we know why you're kind of crazy, Mom. You are tough and you're so crazy to the point that we feel like we are in the Navy SEAL training living with you.
That's not a bad thing for spoiled kids. You know, now in September 1989, at the age of 14, you finally entered the United States and lived with your sister and her family in Louisville, Kentucky. I really enjoyed reading about your wonder and amazement at all of the things we take for granted here in North America: the orderly traffic, the well-stocked, clean grocery stores, yard sales, the colors of the leaves in the fall, and of course, the taste of chocolate. Your book made me realize how lucky and blessed we are to have so much of everything in abundance. I'm so glad that you stressed that in your book.
Thank you. Yes. Imagine when you're an immigrant in a new country, coming from nothing, coming to America with only 2 outfits. And I never saw a telephone. I never saw a computer. And suddenly I was exposed to the airplane flight to America, to orderly traffic, to abundance of food, cereal, not just one kind of cereal. It was dozens different kinds of cereal. I was amazed at what we have in North America. It was an incredible scene.
Well, I have to say that every time I eat a piece of chocolate, after reading your book, I think of you.
Oh, thank you.
Now, obviously, you're a remarkable person. You learned English. You were a very high achiever in high school and you were valedictorian. You got an academic scholarship to attend the University of Louisville while still in high school. And then you attended Centre College. And after graduation, you became a communications consultant. And you eventually got a master's degree in telecommunications engineering. No wonder one of your high school teachers ended up adopting you into her family. You're just amazing.
Oh, thank you. It's a blessing. I got lucky.
You worked hard.
Thank you. That's what many people told me. Even my husband now, he said, Nhi, things seem to go really easy for you, but I live with you. And I know how hard you work behind the scene.
Now, I want to get back to your relationship with your biological mother, which is a really fascinating part of your book. And I think every immigrant, including my mother who came from France, can relate to what you went through when you went back to Vietnam to visit your mother, and she felt that you had become too Americanized. And when you introduced your adoptive mom to your biological mother was jealous of your relationship with your adoptive mom. Isn't it strange that even though it was your mother's greatest dream that you end up in America, she couldn't stop herself from being jealous and resentful of the life that you created for yourself in America?
Yes, that was very interesting, that my biological mother wanted me to have a better life by escaping Vietnam. But after I got adopted and my adoptive mother met my birth mother for the first time, yes, at the beginning, for the first couple of days, it was wonderful. There was a lot of gratitude between the two of them. But when the reality hit, guess what? Psychologically, people, especially my Vietnamese mother, could not control her jealousy. She became envious of my adoptive mother for the relationship she's had with me, which is much closer when you have so much trauma and somebody takes you in as a teenager and resurrected you in a way. You become closer, and my Vietnamese mother could not handle that bond that she missed out during my teenage years.
Well, you know, Nhi, when I was reading about the tension you had with your mother, it occurred to me that she didn't appreciate how very much alike you were. She was an incredibly resourceful, intelligent, and strong woman to find a way for all of you to survive in Saigon. And she arranged for you and several of your siblings to escape Vietnam. I wonder if she realized that you inherited those same qualities, which is what allowed you to become such a success in America. She should have been proud that she gave you those strengths.
That's an excellent point. I think my mother, yes, gave me a lot of the strengths for survival, but I don't think that she actually recognized that, yes, my daughter got these wonderful strengths and quality for me.
Did you ever tell her?
I recently showed her my book after it was released. And it was the first time that she told me she was proud of me.
Really?
Yes. She did not realize that I wrote a book. And in fact, I did not share with anybody aside from my family members who live with me, because I did not want people to influence my thinking. Because as an author, especially when you write a memoir, if you start sharing your story with the family members prior to the release date, they tend to persuade you to change your point of view. And I did not want people to do that. Even with my husband, he did not get to read my manuscript until it was finalized by the publisher. And so my mother did not realize that I wrote a book. And I showed up a week after it was released. And I said, Mom, you know, I wrote a book. She said, no. And I said, I wrote about our family. And she looked at the book and she said, but I don't read English. I started opening up the photo insert of the book. And I said, what's this here? Here's the photo of our family. And I said, and I pointed at a photo of my brother who went missing from his escape. And she said, that's your brother who went missing. And she teared up. And she said, you wrote about us? I said, yes. And how about the photo of you and my adopted mother? Once she saw it, she said, I don't understand English, but I'm so proud of you.
That must have been very healing for you.
It has been very healing for me, knowing that my mother finally approved me for what I've done and who I have become.
I think that you should also find healing in the fact that you immortalized her and your family and your father by writing that book, that people like me who have not had the privilege of meeting you until now have gotten to know them. They've been immortalized. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I want to ask you now about love. After losing your family and being alone in that refugee camp, and then losing a boy you had a crush on who died, you decided to protect yourself from further heartbreak by not letting yourself love anyone. And you kind of numbed your emotions. How long did it take you to be able to really love again?
After being abused, having my crush die and crush physically, I numbed my emotion. And I did not want to fall in love for the longest time until I met my husband, now Jeff. But I think that love was built from the love, the regular love, family love that my adopted family showed me. When my Christian adopted family brought me into their home, they showed me so much love and support. And I learned and watched and realized what love really is, true love can be. And it just peeled off one layer of pain after another. But eventually the ones that I truly fell in love with is my current husband.
Now, when you were dating your husband, Jeff, you got unfriendly and sometimes even hostile looks from people because you were an interracial couple. Has that situation improved over the years, do you think?
It has been improved over the years, but again, I dated him when I was in the South. And in Kentucky, interracial relationship was not very acceptable at the time. That was 23 years ago. I don't know about it being now, but my friends in Kentucky told me that it is still, a racist place. I'm not saying all people, but there are certain people in the rural areas, they might not be as open about interracial relationship.
When Jeff proposed to you and you said yes, he immediately asked you to convert to Judaism. He certainly didn't waste any time in making that request. How did you react to that?
I actually told him that I will not convert to Judaism, but I gave my commitment that I will raise the children Jewish. Because what happened is I don't want to convert unless my heart really feels it. Many people in the Jewish community, we want folks to convert to have a Jewish wedding. And for me, I'm not going to convert just to have a Jewish wedding unless my heart feels and falls in love with the religion, the community, and the people. And I told him, I said, it's not for me. And that's one thing I love about my husband is he does not pressure me into converting. But he said, okay, I will accept the fact that you agree to raise our children Jewish.
Well, you took an 8-month introduction to Judaism course, and you spent the next 4 years immersed in learning about Jewish history and culture before converting to Judaism in 2004. You wrote, and I quote, "It was striking to realize how much my own history and the struggles of the Jewish people had in common." What did you mean by that?
What I found to be very familiar between the Jewish tradition and the Vietnamese people is that we have gone through so many persecution over the years as countries and the people. We also learn to survive. It doesn't matter how much we are being persecuted, but we as people, we want and learn to survive and succeed. And we also focus on education of the children. I've seen many Vietnamese immigrants and the Jewish community too. The families can be house cleaners. We can do yard work, but they still do whatever it takes to get their children to college. We focus on education and we grow as people.
I want to give you another quote from the book. You said, I love the fact that Judaism can be viewed as more of a cultural way of being than a religious belief. Now, you studied Judaism for 4 years. How did you come to the conclusion that it's more of a cultural thing than a religious belief?
I think a religious belief, yes, you learn about history, okay? But we can argue, we can, as the Jews, we can disagree. For the same people who you can disagree, you can read the Torah or half Torah and you disagree and you can argue the heck out of it, okay? So that's why I thought that it is more of a culture because we learn about the tradition, the people, about Shabbat service, and what's important to us as people, which is very similar to the Vietnamese tradition. You learn about what to do when somebody dies. And it's about the tradition of what we do.
You made a point of saying in the book that you didn't just convert to Judaism because your husband was Jewish. You did it because you believed deep within yourself that becoming Jewish was right for you. You feel very strongly about that, don't you?
I do feel strongly about it.
So your advice to people is don't convert just to please your spouse.
I agree completely that don't convert just to please other people or your significant other. Do it just for yourself. Because if you don't do it just for yourself, eventually you are going to have resentment. Saying, I converted just for you to please you and your family. And that's not a good place to be in because you end up losing part of yourself.
Early on in your relationship with Jeff, he asked you if you believe in fate, which I prefer to call destiny, and you said no. Do you still feel that way, Nhi?
Early on, when he asked me dreamingly whether I would believe in soulmate, I said, it's a bunch of bullshit. And now we are married for over 21 years, and I realized that I changed my mind. I think somebody, it doesn't matter what religions people have, but I think there's somebody out there, you can call that person God, the universe, or whatever it is. But somebody out there is putting a puzzle together and mesh us together. Because there's no way on earth I would ever believe that one day I would be married to a Jewish man from a different part of the world. I never heard of Jewish people when I grew up in Vietnam.
Well, look at the incredible serendipity and synchronicity of all of the key events in your life. It's obvious that destiny must have been in operation here.
I agree. I think that it is the universe, God, whoever you can call that person. But somebody out there put all the beautiful events that come into my life.
Do you think that writing the book was therapeutic for you?
Yes, I agree that writing a book was very therapeutic for me because I had to relive the past, especially the first half of the book. It was so painful for me to write it, relive the experience when you are being bullied, being abused, not having enough food to eat. But I can tell you the toughest part for me was having to relive the experience of the molestation. It was harder than me running through the jungles of Cambodia barefoot.
I'm not surprised because the abuse was ongoing, repetitive, relentless.
Yes, and I think it was also the shame. In Asian cultures, it is not a taboo to talk about sexual abuse, molestation. Even today, my family in Vietnam said that there is no rape case being reported in Vietnam, because the moment a woman goes to the government or the police to report a rape case, she would be made fun of and said that she would be lying, and she comes home and the whole neighborhood knows she was a rape victim, and they ostracize her even today. So imagine when I went through that as a child 34 years ago.
But the book was therapeutic for you.
Absolutely. The book was it's very therapeutic. Writing it and dealing with the past, I wrote it every night between midnight and 5 a.m. so that my family would not see me crying.
Oh, Nhi, that's heartbreaking.
But because I dealt with my emotion crying between midnight and 5 a.m. writing it, it helped me heal.
Well, if you could go back in time and speak to that skinny little girl who was selling counterfeit cigarettes in the slums of Saigon, what would you say to her?
If I have to go back and talk to that skinny little girl, I would just say, you were right. There's hope, that there's a better world. There is a better place out there. That when we or you are in desperation, you think you're at the bottom and you cannot move on. Just know there's somebody out there who's watching out, and that your situation will get better. And there's another country, another place out there that would show humanity. And that's how I feel. Have hope that there is a better place, a better situation.
Your book is so full of gratitude for the way your life turned out and the many blessings in your life. I can tell that being grateful is a very important part of who you are, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Being grateful is really critical in helping us lift our spirit to become better. What people ask me, they said, Nhi, how on earth you had the resilience to move on? And I think it was the gratitude, because when I felt really desperate, I thought of the fact that, oh, I have nothing, but at least I have a couple of bites to eat today. I always look at the bright side in any situation I'm in.
Do you have a message for immigrants who come here and who aren't satisfied? They don't like the culture here. They miss what they left behind at home, and they don't feel like they're adjusting well. We have immigrant communities who do have great difficulty adjusting.
Yes, it is so challenging to be an immigrant in a new country. And it takes time. It takes so long just to adapt to a new country. You have to learn how to speak the language. You don't even have to learn how to eat the new food if you have to get outside your community. And just learning language, the culture, and the people, and the culture shock is really challenging for people. And again, just have patience that it's going to get better. It just takes time to adapt to a new place and the new culture.
Well, Nhi, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you about your amazing book and all of the lessons you teach us in the book. I wish you the best of luck with the book, and thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you for having me.
Our guest has been Nhi Aronheim, author of Souls of a Survivor, a memoir. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Remember to subscribe to the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel, and be sure to check out more great interviews with Harvey Brownstone on harveybrownstoneinterviews.com.